What's up, college sports fans? I'm Stuckey.
I'm Colin Wilson.
I'm Mike Calabrese.
I'm Maria Marino.
I'm Charlie DiSturco, and we're excited that the Big Bets on Campus brand is launching its very own YouTube channel.
You'll be able to find every episode of the BBOC podcast, live shows, and other college sports content on this new channel.
Not only will the channel be dedicated to betting on college sports, but you'll also be able to find exclusive interviews with former college athletes,
college football power rankings,
and updates on other topics like the brand new College Football 25 video game series and the ins and outs of the recruiting trail all the way down to the transfer portal.
Whether you're into college football,
college basketball,
college baseball, or any of the college sports,
we are the home for college sports, and BBOC is the channel for you.
Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss any of the action. I'll see you there.
Welcome to Running Hot, Action Network's motorsports betting podcast. I'm your host, Nick Giffen, predictive analyst here at Action Network. And joining me, my co-host, Stephen Young of RotoGrinders, better known as Stevie TPFL. And this week, we're talking bets for the FireKeepers Casino 400 at Michigan International Speedway here on Running Hot. Last weekend at Richmond, oh boy, this is a good one. Austin Dillon wrecked his way to victory. Honestly had the dominant car at the end of the race, but Ricky Stenhouse Jr. brought out a caution with 2 laps to go. Austin Dillon lost the lead to Joey Logano on the ensuing restart. Ended up punting Logano in turns 3 and 4, and then came down and hit Denny Hamlin as well to take the win. Denny Hamlin was scored in second place, and in third place, Tyler Reddick rounding out the top 3. But obviously, Stevie, the controversy with Austin Dillon getting the win. NASCAR on Wednesday decided to allow Austin Dillon to keep his win, but take away his playoff eligibility, dock him 25 points. What are your thoughts on the race and on the penalties that were levied from Richmond?
All right, we'll start with the race. I think the option tire was a success.
Smashing success.
Yeah, all-star race, it was okay. We didn't see the fall off, but I mean, Daniel Suarez went from a 20th place car and would have finished top 5 had Stenhouse not had that issue at the end of the race where he just lost control of his race car. So success, huge success. If you were aggressive with the strategy call like Suarez and McDowell, you put yourself in a position. I think it opens up the possibility for strategy even more at a strategy track already. I mean, Richmond eats up tires so much where it's already a strategy track. So I like the option tire. I thought it was fantastic. I think 2 sets is perfect because it's like, oh, do I leave a set in the garage? Do I not leave a set in the pits? Kind of thing. So I think 2 sets is perfect.
I like teams being forced to make a decision on, do we use the second set before a potential late caution or not? And in this case, it bit those guys that ended up using all their sets. Daniel Suarez was on the charge, and if that caution doesn't come, he probably grabs a top 5, top 4 finish. But because everybody came in a pit, got those option tires, and he was out of sets, he came in a pit, took a set of fresh primary tires, and fell back on that restart a little bit. But I agree with you. I think the tires made a huge difference. We knew it was going to. They were faster at North Wilkesboro. It was just so hard to pass there because it was a new repave. But at Richmond, where you can pass because of the fall off, man, those option tires were something. So really like that. I think the 2 sets was perfect. Now thoughts on the controversy there with the finish.
Yeah, I mean, the end of the race, I've told you this in our messages talking to you as well. So, but I'll say it. Basically, I don't hate the Logano wreck. Logano would have done the same thing to Austin Dillon. Denny Hamlin would have done the same thing to Austin Dillon had he been Joey Logano's position. My biggest issue is the right rearing Denny Hamlin and just kind of out of control, wrecking ball. I'm going to wreck everybody to win this race kind of thing. And that's where I have the biggest problem is we're a sport, as a sport in motorsport and any kind of auto racing, you don't right rear somebody. Like that is how people get hurt and get killed, and we don't want that. So I agree with them taking away the playoff spot. I mean, it's really hard in their rules to kind of take away the win. So I didn't necessarily ever think that was going to happen. I thought it was a strong possibility of them taking away his playoff position. So I like the call on taking away the playoff position. I hate the move on Denny Hamlin. Again, I could have lived with Logano, him and Hamlin drag racing to the finish. Sure. I mean, Joey's done it. He's done it many a times to other drivers. He can't be mad. The person that should be mad is Denny Hamlin, and the people that should be mad is all the people on pit road when Joey Logano was, we'll call it childish. I think that's the best way to put it. I think Logano should be suspended this week. I think Austin Dillon should be suspended this week. I think they should have taken a huge stand to make sure that they know, like drivers know that this is not okay. You can't right rear hook somebody, and you cannot have a damaged race car on pit road and drive towards people. I mean, really bad for Logano. I really hated that. So,
yeah,
but, I mean, that's my thoughts.
I think that Logano penalty should have been maybe even heftier on the fine, potentially a suspension. That's super dangerous. Same with Austin Dillon. I think he should be missing a race, miss the Daytona race, especially because that's, he won Daytona 2 years ago. That was his most recent win. I think missing that one would be huge. And I agree, take the win. As far as playoff eligibility away. Now, obviously the win stands. And in a way you feel for Austin Dillon a little bit because he was going to win that race. But he probably chose the wrong lane on the restart, and he had a bad restart, and that's on him. And that's how NASCAR goes. Without that overtime finish, if we have the old days rules, 2 decades ago, we don't have overtime. He just wins under caution. So it's been a little bit of culmination of a bunch of NASCAR rules coming together. Overtime finishes, double file restarts, all that stuff, kind of playoffs, winning you're in. All of these rules that NASCAR has implemented over the years all came together in one head, in one scenario, and ended up creating massive chaos. And NASCAR had to lay down the hammer because we can't have this going into something like Phoenix where you just wreck your championship contender to win the championship. That would be an absolute black eye for the sport. So NASCAR did the right thing here, but we got to talk some bets. We're going to Michigan this weekend. Michigan, a 2-mile intermediate track. It was repaved in the early 2010s, so not a high tire wear track, but not a track where there's no tire wear either. High speed, of course, with it being 2 miles in length, so a lot of horsepower. What's racing at Michigan like, Stevie?
The easiest way to put it is it's a driver's racetrack. It's a very high-speed racetrack, and it is a fast racetrack. So these are the types of tracks that we call a driver's racetrack, and you got to have a really good balance of speed and handling once you get later into the runs here. And speed is huge. So going into Michigan this week, you're looking at like recent speed of cars and looking at high speed intermediates this season. The tire package this weekend is the same as last year, and then it's like Vegas, Texas, Kansas, Nashville, Pocono. I think you can kind of throw out Nashville in that. It's not even close to this type of racetrack. I don't mind the raw speed of like Pocono, but I really think you're going to be looking at like maybe Kansas the most. I think Kansas is going to be your best comp to Michigan. Maybe a little Charlotte in there as far as like high speed intermediates, but it's definitely a racer's racetrack, very fast, multi-groove racetrack. And last year's race was wild. Let's just call it what it was.
Yeah, I agree. I think Kansas is probably the best comp. And funny enough, you look at the top 5 from Kansas earlier this year and last year's Michigan top 5, 4 of the 5 are the exact same in a little bit different orders. So hat tip to iFantasy Race on Twitter for pointing that out to me. And I do think Kansas is probably the best comp. I do like Charlotte as well. A lot of high speed, plus they race at night, so it makes it a little bit faster as well. Similar repave time and tire wear, so I do think Charlotte is a pretty good comp there as well. But yeah, the high speed intermediates you can add in Vegas, add in Texas. I do like bringing in Pocono and Indy for the horsepower angle, but those are, like I said, lesser comps because they race differently. So yeah, I'm right there with you as far as racing at Michigan. Yeah, it's a classic intermediate, but it is a driver's track with that high speed. Any other thoughts here, intangibles, maybe some manufacturer stuff?
Yeah, one quick thing, I just have some quick thoughts. I've been getting a lot of questions and DMs about am I concerned about JGR and Toyota engine issues? And I'm going to be honest with you, Nick. I really think that they're just kind of running out the last couple runs on some of their engines they used earlier this year, and they're having, late engine issues with that kind of stuff. And I'm not concerned. If anything, I think at playoff time, they're going to have, a new set of engines coming in and be done with those engines that they had to use up to get those new engines. So I think it's just a little bit of mix of that. I mean, it's happening enough where, it's in the back of your head. But, I mean, we're going to another racetrack where we're like, hey, here's Toyota. They're going to be really fast again. So I think you're just going to have to trust a little bit of the speed and just hope that, like, the mechanical issues work themselves out. But, yeah, it's in the back of my mind as far as, like, Toyota. I mean, it's enough now where it's like, all right, Bell, Truex, like, these guys are fast race cars where we're having engine issues. And, yeah, it's in the back of your mind.
Yeah, certainly. And there was a little bit of news out today about those engine issues. I think the TRD was saying it was related to valve springs and maybe some quality issues there. But they think they've kind of isolated that. They're working with their partners that provide some supplies, and I think they'll figure out on getting those things sorted out. So it could be a combination of, like you said, some of the older engines as well, plus some maybe a little bit less reliability than they've been accustomed to in the past, but they're aware of it, and I think it'll get sorted out. So I'm not too worried about it. One other manufacturer note for me, Ford's always been really good at Michigan.
Yep.
Ford, this is a classic Penske track, if you will. Roger Penske owned this track and used to own this track, I should say, and has always been very strong here at Michigan. So just something to be aware of as well. Ford has been making great horsepower. If you remember earlier in the year, they were qualifying really well. And then they've been making great mileage lately. You remember Indy with the mileage and Joey Logano winning at Nashville on mileage. So Ford, I think, is going to be pretty strong this weekend as well. But let's dive into those bets. As always, we're going to take you for a lap around Michigan, 4 turns, 1 pick from Stevie, 1 pick from me per turn before we drive into victory lane. We're going to throw the green flag on the FireKeepers Casino 400 and dive into turn 1. Okay, Stevie, turn 1. We're off to Toyota land here in turn 1. What do you got?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to start off the week with a 2-unit bet. I had Ty Gibbs for top 10 at even money. I absolutely love this. I mean, he is destroying the speed model rankings in my model this week. I mean, he is just somebody that is like jumping off the chart, should be really fast this weekend. And because of some recent like finishes, he's not popping in the betting market, and I love that. I mean, I love being able to take advantage of that. But if we look at these high-speed intermediates, he ranks 4th in speed for me this year, behind Hamlin, Larson, and Reddick. And that's in front of like Martin Truex Jr., William Byron. And I mean, just every racetrack he's been fast. So, I mean, Ty Gibbs is someone I love to bet on in general because I know that there's just a lot of speed in this car. And I think this is a week that we could see Ty Gibbs run up top 5 with the potential to win the race if they can put a whole race together. And that's always his biggest issue. But I don't worry about that as much in betting his top 10.
Yeah, I agree with you right there. Ty Gibbs really pops in my model as well. And you're right. Some of his finishes recently haven't been good. 5 of his past 7 finishes have been outside the top 20. In fact, 22nd or worse. And then the 2 finishes that were better than that, one was still only a 16th place finish. So we're kind of seeing a dip in the betting markets when it's probably a little bit artificial because we haven't been to any similar tracks recently and some bad luck there. So I think this is a great buy low spot on Ty Gibbs. I'm right there with you. 2 units for you for Ty Gibbs top 10. I'm going to go with a 2.25 unit bet. That's only because it's minus 225 for Bubba Wallace over Austin Dillon at BetMGM. Look, I know it's some pretty hefty juice, minus 225, but in this case, the juice is worth the squeeze, as they say. Bubba Wallace has won 13 of the 14 head-to-head matchups between these 2 drivers at, these high-speed intermediates that we've talked about, Vegas, Texas, Charlotte, Kansas, and Michigan, plus adding in Pocono and Indy from this year and last year. 13 out of 14. And even if we go back to 2022, the start of the next-gen era, Bubba Wallace has won 17 of 22 head-to-head matchups, meaning he's won 77.3% of the head-to-head matchups between these 2 at the most relevant tracks. At Michigan, specifically in the next-gen era, Bubba Wallace has absolutely smashed Austin Dillon, and it hasn't been close. And both drivers have finished both races, completed both races. So these are very relevant comparisons. Bubba Wallace's average driver rating in the 2 races at Michigan, 106.6. Austin Dillon's 65.2. That is a monstrous gap. That means Bubba Wallace is running towards the front, and he's led double-digit laps in both Michigan races. And Austin Dillon's running towards the back with those driver ratings, mid-pack or worse. So my model has Bubba Wallace winning this 73.7% of the time. That's more like 280, minus 280, I should say, as fair value. So I like getting minus 225 here. I'm paying the juice, Stevie.
Pay the juice. Bubba Wallace, one of my favorite drivers this weekend. Like some of the finishes this year have been a little unlucky for Bubba Wallace, but I mean, you'd have to get really unlucky for Austin Dillon to beat him. You just look at the head-to-head stats, like you just ran him off. I don't need to run him off again. I mean, like it's clearly Bubba as a huge favorite over Austin Dillon in this matchup.
Yeah, and the one matchup Bubba lost, he had problems at Las Vegas, and he was better than Austin Dillon prior to his problems there. So, it would just take most likely a DNF or like some weird wonkiness on a late rate restart for Bubba to lose this matchup. Can it happen? Yes. Is it going to happen more often than the minus 225? No, that's why I think it should be minus 280. So turn 1 is down. We're going to dive into turn 2. All right, turn 2, Stevie. You're on Bubba Wallace's teammate here in turn 2.
Yeah, 2311 has definitely figured out speed on these high-speed intermediates. And Tyler Reddick, top 5, plus 130. I really wanted to come into the week like betting his outright, and now I'm just kind of hoping he qualifies a little bad where the odds get a little bit better because he's right at what I have him at, and I hate betting those, even though I might pull the trigger just because I do think Tyler Reddick is fantastic. Top 5 in speed on high-speed intermediates since joining 2311. We look at this season, he's been really fast on these types of tracks, and just everything kind of fitting for him. Like I mentioned, Hamlin, Larson, 1-2 as far as speed for me, and then Tyler Reddick is right there in third. And like last year, he was going to win this race. I mean, I'll say it. He was going to win this race, and they did not get the right rear tight. The tires started to come off. He lost laps on pit road, and he was going to come out in front of the leaders and win this race. So Chris Buescher, Martin Truex Jr., probably thinking Tyler Reddick last year. I'm going to overlook some issues and just say Tyler Reddick's going to have speed and bet his top 5 this week.
Yeah, Tyler Reddick definitely was going to win that race last year. And, looking at my model, as far as Tyler Reddick and his outright, the best out there is plus 950 right now. And I am exactly to the decimal point in line with that as fair odds. So I can't take the win, but I think moving over to a top 5 would make sense after that, top 3 or top 5 kind of bet. And that's what you're doing here in turn 2. For my turn 2 pick, I'm going to go to the Ford camp. Remember, I told you I like them this weekend. And I'm going to take Michael McDowell to have his finishing position under 22.5. I got it at minus 125. It's now minus 140. Still like that. And that's because my model has this at over 66% for Michael McDowell to finish 22nd or better. That's right around minus 200, like minus 190, minus 195 as fair value. So still don't mind paying the juice here at minus 140. And I think the reason we have this finishing position number for Michael McDowell is because his track history hasn't been good, but part of it's been a little bit of bad luck. Part of it has been inferior equipment. But this year, they have that Tier 1, Front Row Motorsports has that Tier 1 partnership from Ford with Team Penske Alliance. They have been so much better on the higher speed intermediates. Las Vegas, he finished 25th. They had a really bad tire strategy there. He took no tires and fell all the way to the back of the pack and just had a hard time recovering. DNF'd at Texas, but they had some speed. 10th at Kansas, though, with good speed, and top 20 at Charlotte with a 16th place finish. And then at the recent, higher speed flat tracks, a 24th and a 16th, so an average of a 20th place finish. So I just a little bit too high of a line here from Michael McDowell. I think I have his median finishing position somewhere around 18.5. But if you're just looking at 22.5 minus 140, I would play this all the way down to minus 180, minus 190 before we're getting into model error territory here. If it drops down to 21.5, you can play this to around minus 160 or so, something like that. So Michael McDowell under 22.5 finishing position.
Yeah, I don't hate this. I am like very hesitant to bet McDowell right now because there's been reports that like Ford is just not giving him any support right now at all, because he's leaving at the end of the year. So I think we see it like this week, next week, and then at Darlington, like the next 3 races, he is still very playable. But I think once the playoffs start, we are going to have to be very, very careful with Michael McDowell bets. So I agree with you on this, though. I think strategy and speed alone, he should finish inside the top 20. So I'm with you on this one. I'm just saying, like, future episodes, we're going to be very hesitant on McDowell because, I mean, Ford's going to be focusing on playoff drivers or like Todd Gillen or like developing drivers. They are not going to be giving any resources to McDowell after playoff start.
Except maybe where he could win, right? Watkins Glen. Why wouldn't Ford want to win there, right? Michael McDowell absolutely could win at Watkins Glen. And then drafting tracks are drafting tracks. And, you know, I think that's a different ballpark there. But I think you're right. Like the classic intermediates or the short flats, those kinds of things, Michael McDowell, we get really hesitant with in the playoffs. But here, while you still could squeak out a playoff position with a win if you have the right strategy, I'm not afraid. Michael McDowell, you know, if they've been pulling support, well, he did finish, 16th at Indy right before the break here. So that's good enough for me on Michael McDowell. But turn 2, Stevie is on Tyler Reddick, top 5. For me, turn 2, Michael McDowell finishing position under 22.5. That means we're halfway through the 2-mile lap at Michigan. Before we get to turn 3, I want to remind you all Running Hot is presented by BetMGM. Use bonus code ACTION when signing up to get up to $1,500 back in bonus bets if your first bet does not win. For new users in Arizona, Colorado, Illinois, Indiana, Iowa, Kentucky, Louisiana, Maryland, Massachusetts, Michigan, New Jersey, North Carolina, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Tennessee, Virginia, West Virginia, and Wyoming. Terms and conditions apply. Must be 21 or older. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. All right, 2 turns down, 2 turns to go. We're going to dive into turn 3. Turn 3, Stevie, you're not backing away from the Toyotas here. You're taking the whole team here, right?
Oh, yeah. We're going to go to winning manufacturer Toyota. Ford has won 9 straight races here. Toyota hasn't won here since 2015. I don't care. I mean, it's just not the same racing as it was in 2015 or even the last 9 years when Ford has won. Like you said, this is a place that like Penske and Stewart-Haas and Ford just dominated for years and years. And I mean, even Buescher last year won this race. But looking back and thinking about even last year's race, Tyler Reddick, Martin Truex Jr. both had issues on pit road. They were both better than the Fords. Christopher Bell was really fast before he wrecked in that race last year. Looking at the data from this year, it very heavily favors Toyota. And we're getting them at plus 130 this week. So finally being able to take advantage of Toyota. I mean, they've been, pretty much minus money here for the last 5 weeks, but plus 130 over on BetMGM. Really like Toyota to win this race this week.
Yeah, I mean, Toyota obviously, if you like Tyler Reddick, if you like Bubba Wallace, you like Ty Gibbs, obviously we're going to like Denny Hamlin. Martin Truex Jr. nearly won this race last year. They're great. There's no reason, and we didn't even talk about Christopher Bell. Obviously, he's had 2 really good cars at Michigan over the 2 races. He doesn't have the finishes to show for it, but he has had 2 very fast cars. And then Eric Jones actually pretty good at this track as well. Yep. Just in case, that Legacy Motor Club crew, and Eric Jones did just re-sign a multi-year deal with Legacy Motor Club earlier this week. Last week, I think it was late last week. So yeah, Toyota definitely seems like the manufacturer to beat here. Across the whole team should be pretty strong. Across the whole, I should say, manufacturer team camp there, they should be pretty strong. For my turn 3 pick, honestly, Steve, this one might be my favorite bet of the week. I really like this one. I'm going to take Noah Gragson to finish as the top Ford. 40-1, you can get it at BetMGM. I have this at 6.4% in my model, right? And 40-1 is like around 2.5%. So I'm nearly 4%, or I'm right around 4% over market value on this. Noah Gregson's best track type this year has been the high-speed intermediates. He finished 6th at Las Vegas and really came on at the end of that race. Finished 9th at Kansas. Has had a couple other strong runs. He did wreck out at Charlotte, but had speed at both Charlotte and Texas. Recently at Indy, he just finished 9th if we want to look at like high horsepower. So I'm on board here with Noah Gragson. And if we look at his track history at Michigan, it's sneaky been one of his best tracks. We think about how good he is at like a Martinsville or some of these shorter flat tracks, but Michigan has been sneaky one of his best tracks. Use something called my driver quality metric or my track quality metric. Noah Gragson from the Xfinity series had a plus 11.8% track quality metric, which is really hard to do when you're running as well as you do in the Xfinity series. That means he was 11.8% better at Michigan than his average track. And we're talking about a guy that was nearly the Xfinity series champion for multiple years. So to have this be that much higher than your average track means you're really good here. So I like Noah Gragson top forward 40-1. My model, like I said, has this at 6.4%. I mean, that's down below 20-1 as fair value per my model. I don't know if I'd bet it that low. Maybe my model's a little high on him, but I really like this bet at 40-1.
Yeah, I bet his top 10 at 4-1. So I like this. I think it's going to be tougher to beat like Keselowski and some of these guys. But I mean, it's a racetrack where Stewart-Haas has had plenty of speed here, and as much crap as we've given Stewart-Haas over the last 2 years, like they've actually not been terrible this year. And we talked about it being like a driver's track, and like Noah Gragson is a wheelman. I mean, this kid is very, very talented, and I mean, definitely interested in Noah Gragson bets.
All right, you mentioned that top 10 bet. BetMGM has the best top 10 odds on Noah Gragson right now at plus 425.
There you go.
I have 22.1% in my model, which is well clear of that value at plus 450. So I'm adding Noah Gragson top 10 as well at plus 425 at BetMGM. Little bonus bet here on a running hot in turn 3. That means we got one turn left, turn 4. All right, final turn, Stevie. You got to complete the Toyota wheel here. As far as your turn picks, maybe Victory Lane will have something else there as well. But what do you got in turn 4?
I didn't realize it when I was doing my picks this week that I had 4 Toyota bets, but hey, it definitely goes into my theme. I love the Toyotas this week, and I'm going to go to an outright here. Bubba Wallace 25-1 to win this race at a half a unit. They have been running fantastic. I mean, they have gone from way below the cut line where we were kind of curious if they were going to race for race wins to now +3 on the cut line. They have put together good race, quality race after quality race, and he was really good at Michigan last year. We talk about the Kansas correlation, 23-11. Outside of earlier this year, their Kansas race wasn't anything that we were expecting. I think they just kind of missed on something. Not too concerned about that. I really like Bubba. He was really good here Sunday last year, and when the race went to Monday, he kind of fell off a little bit. So I think Bubba is someone that can easily win this race. Really like his teammate Tyler Reddick. I think if they had the opportunity, I don't know if Tyler Reddick would necessarily race Bubba very hard at the end of this race. I think it's very important for 23-11 to get both cars in the playoffs, and I think Tyler Reddick and Bubba Wallace are both very much team players.
Yeah, I agree with that. Both of those guys are team players, and Bubba Wallace leading double-digit laps in both of these next-gen races has definitely had one of the best track records at Michigan in the next-gen era, and Toyota as a whole just making horsepower, making speed at these types of tracks. So Bubba Wallace 25-1 for Stevie. I'm going to go to his car owner, Denny Hamlin at plus 650. I got it 7-1 earlier in the week. I don't mind plus 650. It gets a little thin for me according to my model. So if you want to pass at 650, if you didn't get 7 and just end up with that, Toyota team bet, I'm fine with that. But I still like Denny Hamlin plus 650 per my numbers here. Denny Hamlin finished inside the top 3 at both Michigan races in the next gen era, actually led the most laps in the 2022 edition of this race. He's been great at the high-speed intermediates. I mean, he's been great everywhere, but he's been great at the high-speed intermediates, had speed at Vegas, led the most laps at Kansas. Just came off a second place finish at Pocono, which again, we talk about for horsepower, 5th at Charlotte. So it's one of those things. Denny Hamlin's good everywhere, even at the road courses, which may be his worst track type. He's just good everywhere. And 7-1 was just a little too long for me. 6.5, like I said, pretty thin. But if you want to take it, my model technically still shows value there on Denny Hamlin.
Yeah, ranks first in speed on these high-speed intermediates this year. Was by far the fastest car at Kansas earlier this year. I mean, I have nothing bad to say about Denny Hamlin. The only thing is, like you said, if you're not comfortable at plus 650, you could wait until after qualifying. Denny's not a good qualifier. Like we talk about Ty Gibbs and Tyler Reddick, and these guys are just so good at qualifying. Martin Truex Jr. has been good at qualifying or bad at qualifying. He's like hit or miss. But Denny, like, he doesn't typically start the race with good track position, so you can wait like post qualifying or maybe try to get like a live bet on Denny. But he's going to be fast. I mean, he's going to be fired up after last weekend, and he's going to be fast.
Yep, absolutely. So those are our turns 1 through 4 bets. So we've completed a lap at Michigan International Speedway. Only one thing left to do: drive into victory lane, and it's going to be a Toyota. Stevie, what's our victory lane pick for the FireKeepers Casino 400?
All right. Well, I mean, I keep saying so pot committed on this guy, but I mean, my model just keeps saying that there's value on Ty Gibbs outrights, and he's 22-1. Bet is top 10. One of my favorite bets. Like I said, it's a 2-unit bet for me. I really like Ty Gibbs this week, and all the speed is going to be there. We know it's going to eventually happen. He's too fast not to put a whole race together, and Michigan is a racetrack where speed matters, and he's going to have plenty of speed. So looking at the data and how fast he's been on this type of racetrack, my model has him closer to like 17, 18-1 in that range as like fair value. So showing a lot of value at 22-1 here. And we know Ty Gibbs is going to qualify well. He can put a lap down. Him and Noah Gragson, they qualify. Carson Hocevar, like these guys, they just don't care. They go out and they qualify well. You look at his last like 4 races on these high speed intermediates: 1st, 6th, 2nd, 8th, 11th, 4th. That's where he's qualified in those 6 races. Like Ty Gibbs, if you're going to bet him, you have to bet him pre-qualifying.
Yeah, I'm into 22-1. My model has him, like you said, around 17, 18-1. Mine's plus 18, 20. So I like 22. I like 20-1 if you have it out there. I want to bet Ty Gibbs before he wins. And we talked about that little dip in the market here. We're buying the dip. He's had 5 out of 7, like kind of rough finishes, and even almost 6 out of 7 rough finishes. But the speed is there, especially at this track type. So Ty Gibbs, 22-1 is our victory lane pick for Running Hot. And that is going to do it for Running Hot. Thanks for listening to the FireKeepers Casino 400 episode, Action Network's Motorsports Betting Podcast. We'll be back next week as we talk bets for the Coke Zero Sugar 400 at Daytona. Stevie, you and I both love some super speedway racing. It's going to be wild with the playoffs, looming, a win and you're in scenario. So it should get wild at Daytona. On behalf of my co-host, Stephen Young, thanks again for listening. We'll see you back here next week on Running Hot from Action Network.